didn't realize this was one of your bumper music bits. I can usually tell who's producing by who's playing music, but I thought this was one of Tyler's. I do like this one. All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday morning as we have wall-to-wall baseball and plenty of rain. Rain, go away. 5 postponed games yesterday. The only other time I can remember even something close to that was 3 or 4, maybe even like 7 or 8 years ago. There was a Midwest cold snap, and there was like 8 inches of snow in Cleveland. Detroit had snow. Like they were canceling entire series. Chris, that was a long time ago, but it was crazy yesterday.
Yeah, that was a wild slate yesterday. We still have some rain in the forecast today for a few games, but it doesn't look like it's going to be nearly as bad, fortunately.
Yep. We've already lost the game in New York. Texas and New York has been postponed. The afternoon game, New York Mets at Philadelphia Phillies, looks like that one's probably going to get rained out. We have Mike Awesemo producing today. He says it's pretty crappy in Philly. And I'm, equidistant from DC and Baltimore. It's been raining nonstop in the whole DC metro area for the last 48 hours. I don't think they're going to play in Baltimore today. And it's starting to get a little colder as well. So I'm guessing those will be gone. We'll touch on those ones briefly, but we'll hit on the other games because of course, there will be stuff. We will be covering all of them. And we are brought to you by Prize Picks today. So we will talk to them a little bit. In the meantime, if you guys could hit that like button, we always do appreciate it. And hey, go ahead and subscribe. We're continuing our quest towards 100,000 subscribers. Of course, we got a few other milestones to get through before we get there, but anything you guys do to like and subscribe definitely helps us out and helps us keep this content coming for free. Free content today. Some of the premium tools you can get a sneak peek on: the NBA ownership projections, the NBA player projections, the NHL ownership projections, and UFC pro plays. So let's jump on in here. Chris, we'll go to our first game, Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. This is an early start, 12:35, I believe, or 12:40. That is only on the DK slate, but that's when they're starting their main early slate. We have JT Brubaker on the mound. I said bad things about JT Brubaker in his last couple starts, wanting to target against him. He's going against Cincinnati. I'm looking to target him. How things change. What do you got in this first one for us, Chris?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the prettiest game in the world, but we do have a pretty small slate in the early slate, so I think we have to have interest in just about every single game here. Brubaker, while he's not an amazing pitcher, I think he's good enough in a good spot here versus Cincy. We know a lineup that's got a lot of creative players in there that a lot of people probably are not familiar with. Not a good offense right now. And if you're looking at Brubaker's numbers since last season, we got about 150 inning sample size, a solid 24% K rate. Does get the walks up there a little bit, but it does give him some power, and we aren't a hitter from the park over in Cincy. But at $6,300 on a small slate, I think we have to have some interest versus a pretty weak Cincy offense.
Yeah, and this Cincinnati offense, one of the epically bad. They're essentially bottom 2 in almost every offensive category, both from standard metrics and advanced metrics. Just an absolute dumpster fire at this point. Are they that bad? I don't think so, but they're still going to be a bottom 5 team no matter what this season on offense. So someone we will be looking to pick on quite a bit. Do you give Connor Overton any consideration here going against the Pirates, who are not exactly an offensive juggernaut themselves?
Yeah, so last time Overton was pitching, I believe we were both on the show together, and he was facing off versus the Rockies, and I had a lot of interest in the Rockies, and Overton kind of shut them down. They didn't do anything. It did not end well. It could be a similar case here versus Pittsburgh, but once again, we're a hitter-friendly park for Overton. I like the opposing team. I think the Pirates are one of the better stacks on the early slate today, just because we don't have that many great offenses to pick from outside of the Dodgers, and the Twins look pretty interesting as well. But I think I'm going to get to a lot of Pittsburgh stacks on the early slate.
Yeah, Overton essentially survived in that Coors Field start. 8 ground balls really helped him out. Survived with 5 fly balls. Only allowed 5 total base runners. Just 1 came around to score. Some nice hit sequencing for him. You got those ground ball pitchers. Things can go well, and if they go through the gap, things can go poorly. So something to always keep tabs on there. But by no means is this gentleman overly talented. He is in his age 28 season. He's appeared last year for Toronto and Pittsburgh. This year he's with Cincinnati. He's worth being a bullpen arm. He kind of looks like a multi-inning reliever, but he's going to get the opportunity to be a starter just because they don't really have anybody else to roll out there at this point. Heading to our second game now that the Rangers-Yankees game is postponed, we have game 1 of the Los Angeles Dodgers and Chicago Cubs doubleheaders. We do have a couple doubleheaders today. This one these two teams are going to be both on the early slate as well as being on the main slate. Plenty of time for this. We should have starting lineups easily for that late game. This isn't a condensed doubleheader. So we've got Clayton Kershaw taking the bump, going against Drew Smyly. Couple of lefties here in this one. Of course, the Dodgers have their veritable all-star lineup featuring 3 former MLB MVPs. They have 4 other players that have made all-star games, and then Gavin Lux and catcher Will Smith. He's not in the lineup. It's Austin Barnes this morning, but good God, an embarrassment of riches here. The wind is blowing in today in Wrigley. We know that the recent renovations, or the renovations of the last a few years ago, have kind of tampered the wind effects, but still not exactly balmy. It's 52. The wind is coming in. This has a 6.5 implied run total here for the entire game, just 4 for the Dodgers. What do you want to do here? Are you looking towards let's start with the pitching first here.
So the pitching obviously is going to look very good, especially from one side here with Clayton Kershaw. I would say he's definitely the top pitcher on the early slate today. Just no reason not to like him. Only a 2.7 implied team total against him. Dating back to his numbers since last year, even this year, it's just been fantastic. But a 2.7 xFIP, 30.5% K rate, doesn't walk anybody, doesn't give him much power. There's strikeouts in the Chicago Cubs lineup. I like Clayton Kershaw versus just about anybody. And with the wind blowing in on Wrigley, definitely bumps him up quite a bit for me. So I know his price point's pretty steep at $10,000, but I am going to make it a key focal point to get him in my lineups on the early slate today.
All right. Did you watch his last game where he got that record, the strikeout record?
I was following on the MLB app.
It was kind of fun. He ended up with 7 strikeouts there, and then they ended up losing the game after he left. So a bit of a disaster there. But Kershaw, while he is not the most amazing pitcher that he was at the absolute apex of his powers when he was winning 3 Cy Young awards, he's still a top 25 pitcher. He'd be an ace on most teams. So we'll definitely want to consider him. Drew Smyly, on the other hand, yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing about him is he's not a bad pitcher. He's not a great pitcher, but he's not a bad pitcher. But he does not usually get blown up. Rarely does he give up more than 3 or 4 runs. They'll come on the occasional solo home run, but it's hard to get overly excited about offenses against him. Would you consider the Dodgers as a primary stack, or is this mostly looking at 2s and 3s from their lineup because they are that good and just making them a secondary stack?
I never say to not full stack the Dodgers, but on the slate, they are pretty pricey. And I do think you can make a case for several spend up pitchers that we'll talk about in a little bit from another game. And obviously you're probably playing Clayton Kershaw. So you're going to run out of money quick. And with the wind blowing in on Wrigley and Drew Smyly not being the worst pitcher out there, I'm not going to be over the top in love with the Dodgers on this slate. And Drew Smyly is not a bad pitcher. He does give some pop though, close to 2 homers allowed per 9 since last season. So I think we could go home run hunting with a couple guys, but even then the hitting conditions are not going to be that great. So I'm probably going to more so one-off or mini stack the Dodgers on this slate.
All right, we're going to keep moving along here because we have a couple slates to talk about even after our early one. A reminder, we are sponsored by Prize Picks today. If you use the promo code Awesemo, they will match you up to $100 with your initial deposit bonus. You will also get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content by using that same promo code Awesemo. We'll talk a little bit more about them between our slates here. But heading in here to Oakland, at Minnesota. Let's look at the weather here. Is it going to be cold? No, 68 degrees in Minnesota. Good God, that's like a heat wave going on right now, at least for the spring. They do get pretty hot up there in the summer, but definitely very cold in the winter. You got James Kaprielian taking the bump here for Oakland. Having a rough season right now. He's an adequate pitcher, but projects best as a multi-inning reliever. On the other side, you have Sonny Gray saying hello to former friends here. How are you feeling about Sonny Gray going against Oakland? Oakland dealt away pretty much any player that wasn't nailed down. They are looking at a robust heart of their order, including Chad Pinder, Seth Brown, and Kevin Smith. Yikes.
Yeah, it's not a pretty lineup. I mean, they've kind of surprised me in some games this year, but we're still dealing with some pretty small sample sizes. Over the course of the season, Oakland's going to be a bottom tier offense. And I think Sonny Gray at $7,700, while he's kind of an up and down pitcher, I've had many times where I roster Sonny Gray and he does not end well, but I've had many times where he's pitching like an ace level guy and he's getting 30+ points. And I'm willing to bet he's going to have a pretty solid game here versus Oakland. I mean, he's a solid pitcher overall, 3.7 xFIP, 27% K rate. He can walk some guys, but doesn't typically give up too much power and just have a lean to the ground balls. I think in a soft matchup versus Oakland, in a spot where I think Minnesota picks up the win, as long as he can go those 5+ innings, I think he's going to be a pretty solid play today and hopefully get over a quality start over on FanDuel.
Here's a little bit of fun trivia. Who is older, Sonny Gray or Drew Smiley?
I feel like I've seen Sonny Gray pitch him for longer.
Sonny Gray, 4 months younger than Drew Smiley. Season 10 here for Sonny Gray. They're both 32. But wow, I would have figured Gray would be a little younger than Smiley. For what it's worth, Kershaw 34. So our perceptions sometimes can be a little bit skewed depending on how good some of these players are at the beginning of their career, or how early they reached kind of their apex. So fun with trivia there. Let's continue. Oh, before we move on this one here. So the Twins are missing, like, as Lofty likes to say, myriad players, which you can say myriad as it's a myriad of reasons or myriad reasons, depending on if it's a verb or an adverb, or I don't know what. I'm not very good at the English rules, but you can say that either way. Byron Buxton, phenomenal. Max Kepler was at the bottom third of the lineup. He's now moving up to the top third because they're missing so many players. You've got Jorge Polanco. He kind of bounces around depending on who's the mound. He'll bat first or second. And then, Trevor Larnach, Jose Miranda, nice home run at a low cost from him last night. Nick Gordon, Ryan Jeffers. Oh, Alex Kirilloff is back. That's great. Royce Lewis. I don't even know who Royce Lewis is. Never heard of him. Where is everybody? Miguel Sano out with having surgery. They're missing 4 other regulars here. I still kind of like the Twins though, and it's buy one get one free on DraftKings right now.
Right. And they currently are tied with the highest implied team total on the slate, so it's not like they're all bargains, but it's not like they're not in a good spot here versus Caprelli. And I actually think the Twins, you can make a case for them being the top stack on the slate. Throw in the fact that besides Buxton and Polanco, they're all like basically free. DraftKings is paying you to play them. You can easily fit in double stud pitchers on this slate. So I'm getting to the Twins a lot. So are a lot of other people. They're going to be pretty high owned, but I mean, it's hard not to like Buxton, Kepler, Polanco, Trevor Larnach at the top of the order. And the other guys look pretty good too.
All right, so here's who's out for them. Carlos Correa has a bruise. They thought it was a fractured middle. I think it was the knuckle of his middle or index finger. I forget which. Got hit by a pitch, so he's going to be day to day. You have Luis Arias, who is out on, I believe he's on the COVID list with Dylan Bundy. Miguel Sano tore his meniscus, so he's going to end up on surgery. You got Kyle Garlick, who is out on the injured list. You've got Bailey Ober, their pitcher, who's dealing with the groin injury. It's just a ton of people are hurt here. This is kind of interesting because they were looking like a paper tiger to start the season, but they're in a bit of trouble right now. So just keep in mind that they're not quite the Twins we're used to seeing from earlier this season, but there are some nice values here, particularly on DraftKings. We've got one last game here. This is game 1 of the Blue Jays Cleveland Guardians doubleheader here, and it looks like, depending on where you're looking, it seems to be that we have Kevin Gausman and Shane Bieber starting game one. I did our run sheet very early this morning, and it was kind of conflicting. We'll definitely know that before it starts, but it seems to be most of the information sites have now landed on that particular matchup. We got to like the Biebs. We got to like Gausman here. It's a cooler weather game here, lower implied run total, just because that's the way baseball is happening this season. It's only going to be 50 degrees. There's a 12 to 15 mile an hour breeze coming in from right field. Feels like we want to go with the pitching in this one. What is your appetite for the Biebs in this matchup?
Yeah, I definitely love Shane Bieber here. I think if you're playing cash games, he's going to be the SP2A get to in addition with Clayton Kershaw. You get a really nice discount here, $1,500 cheaper than Gausman. I feel like they got similar upside. I realize the matchup is much tougher versus the Blue Jays. Definitely a lot more damage that can be done to Bieber, but at the same time, it's a tough matchup versus the Blue Jays going to be against Shane Bieber, who's got a 31.5% K rate, 2.97 xFIP since last season. Doesn't give up too much power. I love the price tag. He's going to be popular, but I think it's for a good reason. As far as Gausman goes, I think he's more so your pivot from Clayton Kershaw up top. It's a softer matchup versus Cleveland. Not a team that really strikes out too much. They can be quite pesky, but both pitchers look excellent here.
All right, so we have a 3-game slate now on FanDuel here for the early slate, 4 on DraftKings with that postponement. Is it Bieber, Kershaw, Gausman, Gray? Is that going to be your order, or is it kind of blur when you get to Gray, Brubaker, Smiley, etc. for number 4?
Yeah, Gray is definitely in that number 4 spot. The other 3 are certainly locked in to be there, and that's pretty much my pitcher pool. Everybody else just really is not that interesting to me. I kind of like to have a tight core for pitchers usually.
All right, and then just looking at FanDuel by itself, is there one that stands out the most? Is it going to be Bieber for you?
Let me pull up their prices really quick at the FanDuel. Yeah, so for me, Clayton Kershaw is up there at 10,500. Bieber is coming in, I believe, at $9,800. I feel like the upside's similar. I do feel a little bit safer with Kershaw, so if I can get the funds for him, I would like to, just because I'd much rather pitch against the Cubs with the wind blowing in than I would the Blue Jays, but they are quite interchangeable depending on what you're going with your offense.
All right, and then top offense of the slate. God, dare we say the Twins?
I think it is the Twins. It feels weird saying it because they're so
or the understudies, right? This is like the Saturday matinee. It's like all the regular stars get the day off from the play, and this is just like the understudies.
Right. I think it's the Twins, and they're coming at a really nice discount, so it's quite easy to fit in the pitching, whatever it may be on this slate. So I'm gonna roll with them. It could be ugly, and it looks ugly, but I think it might end up solid.
All right, we're going to hit this afternoon slate, then we'll dive into some prize picks. In the meantime, I do want to let you know we have one of our best Awesemo promos going on right now. So to start May off right, we are giving you the opportunity to get 7 full days of Awesemo Platinum for $7. That's a 77% discount from our usual weekly price. Again, this is everything, not just baseball. Promo code Luka at checkout lowers the price to just $7. That's LUKA. So with this, you get the NBA Boom Bust tool, the top stacks tool, the top pitchers tool, everything, NASCAR, all the goodness. We've got tennis projections. We've got F1 projections. That would be Formula One racing to go along with the NASCAR. We have 3 different NASCAR circuits. Last night was the trucks. This afternoon in about 90 minutes is going to be the Xfinity race. And then of course you have the marquee race on Sunday. Where are we this week, Chris?
We're in Darlington. They're practicing and qualifying as we speak.
Excellent. So that one should be a fun one. We've had a lot of high lap count races recently. Yeah. We're getting into a stretch here where it's not quite the super speedways, but it's no longer the paperclip racetracks. So this is, again, you want to look at things a little bit differently. You always, when I first started watching NASCAR, I didn't know a whole lot about it. This is like 25, 30 years ago where I started watching it more seriously. And then you realize the good teams have different cars for every racetrack. There's different setups. I just thought they used the same car every week. It's like, no, not even close. knows? As they like to see in Days, they say in Days of Thunder, there ain't nothing stock about a stock car. So lots of fun there, but we have lots of content both in front of and behind the paywall for NASCAR. Of course, Chris is on our featured show on YouTube most weeks discussing that. So let's move on to the 3-game 4:00 slate. Things are looking a little dicey in Philadelphia. Of course, that is where we have the best pitchers on this slate. Well, actually, this slate is pretty solid when it comes to pitching, but Max Scherzer, Kyle Gibson, strong chance those guys are not going to be an option today because this game will likely get postponed. Just a quick summary on them. I don't think we really need to talk about the offenses, but maybe hit a little on the pitchers.
Yeah, obviously the pitchers are going to look very strong in this first game, which I think ends up getting rained out. But you have Max Scherzer. It's 35% K rate, doesn't walk many guys, doesn't give too much power. Just have that fly ball lean, which can get him into trouble sometimes with maybe a rare homer here and there. But it's hard not to like Max. Now, is the matchup great? No, the Phillies have plenty of damage that they could potentially do. I mean, you have Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, lefties that could give him some trouble. You have Castellanos, JT Realmuto, but I always give the advantage to elite pitching, and that is something Max Scherzer is. We do have winds blowing in around 19 miles per hour. And as far as Kyle Gibson goes, he's a good real life pitcher, but he always seems to be overpriced on the fantasy sites because he doesn't really get that many strikeouts. I mean, I believe since last season, he's sitting at just below 21% with the 4X, but like that's fine for real life purposes, doesn't get much power, but for DFS, we need those 25+% K rates for the most part, especially if you're going to be above $9,000. So I'm not really one that typically plays Kyle Gibson too much.
All right. And then just again, for perspective, it is pouring rain and in the mid 40s in Philadelphia. Same weather up and down the East Coast here, DC metro area. We're looking at 50 degrees, like literally 50 degrees and pouring rain. So again, Baltimore, Philadelphia looking like they're going to join that New York Yankees game and be postponed. But we have 2 games that look pretty strongly like they will play. Of course, we need at least 2 for this slate to go off. We've got Detroit at Houston. Fortunately, it is going to be warm in Houston. We'll have to wait and see what they're going to do with the roof there. But it is going to be in the 90s. So if that's too hot, then they'll have the roof closed. If it's nice enough there in Houston, then they'll leave it open. I don't know what their cutoff line is, but I do, while I'm thinking of it, want to mention that today and tomorrow in Arizona, Chase Field roof is scheduled to be closed. It was open last night, but it'll be closed tonight and tomorrow. We've got Eduardo Rodriguez, a lefty, going against Houston. Though the names have changed, the Houston skill set just still knocks the crap out of the ball against lefties. You've got Rodriguez, who has never quite reached the apex powers that he flashed in his early career with Boston. He's still a serviceable pitcher. He's not an easy mark, but this is one of the tougher matchups for lefties. On the other side, you have Framber Valdez, solid pitcher in his own right, not quite getting there with the strikeouts like we'd like to see, but he is definitely someone who is capable of closing out a Detroit Tigers offense that still has Miguel Cabrera and Jonathan Scope playing prominent roles. Jonathan Scope, I was trying to spark him, Chris, by dropping him off every single one of my season-long leagues. Somehow I ended up with him in the later rounds on most of them, and I started looking at his numbers. It's like, dude, you're not even hitting your weight. Come on, you're just, we're done with you. It hasn't spurred him on yet, but perhaps today he'll get a couple extra base hits. What do you want to do with the pitchers here?
I think the pitchers are both interesting. I'd have more interest over on the Framber Valdez side just because the matchup's a little bit softer going against Detroit, and plus there's always good win equity with rostering a Houston Astros pitcher. They have the higher implied run total at 4.8 compared to 3.4 for the Tigers. The thing is, both these pitchers are not ones I roster too much. Eduardo Rodriguez, I do a little bit, but he is just one of the most unlucky pitchers in all of baseball. I mean, ERA north of 5 since last season, but with an xFIP of 3.5 and a 26.5% K rate. Like when you look below the surface, he's got some pretty solid numbers. The problem is, I don't know what it is. He just is very unlucky. As far as Valdez goes, another solid pitcher, but as far as DFS goes, a 21% K rate, typically someone who's very expensive, not super expensive on this slate, so it's a little bit easier to get to. A main appeal with rostering Framber Valdez is that the ground ball rate's insane. It's a 71% ground ball rate compared to a 13% fly ball rate. So he's not typically going to get the ball too much in the air. He does walk a lot of guys, though. The strikeouts really aren't there, but on such a small slate, I don't think I can really talk anybody off of a cheap Valdez versus Detroit.
Yeah, and that's sort of where we're going to land here. I mean, when we lose that game, this is like a turbo slate. You're going to DK. You're going to have to roster 2 of the 4 pitchers that we have. So it's the necessary evil. But it also allows me to say my favorite thing: go ahead and take some hitters against your pitchers. Nothing wrong with that. Actually worked out for me last night. I had Eric Lauer, and then I had Albies going against him on more lineups than I would have cared to know. I set my cruncher usually to allow 1 or 2 batters against my pitcher, which never comes into play if I'm doing 4-4 and 4-3 and 5-3 stacks. And some one-offs came through. So, hey, no problem there. Both nice night by both those guys. But one of those things that on the short slates, I would go as many as 3 against my pitcher, because you have to think half their at-bats are going to go against somebody else. And unless your pitcher's going to throw a no-hitter, he's going to give up something. Maybe it'll be to your batters, and then people still kind of shy away from that, even in today's information age and DFS sports, with all of the different strategies, and where we've proven time and time again that it's okay to do that these days, particularly the way baseball has changed. The second game on this slate, we have the Red Sox and the White Sox. This one is in Boston. Dylan Cease going against Nick Pivetta. Cease is an excellent pitcher. Had a kind of a kind of a 3-way breakout there in Chicago, when you had Cease, Giolito, and Carlos Rodon all kind of figure things out at the same time. Of course, Rodon is now in with the Giants, but Dylan Cease, arguably the co-ace there with Giolito. How are you feeling about him in this matchup? And considering, I mean, he is the best pitcher on the slate, where would you feather in Nick Pivetta with our other 2 pitchers?
Yeah, Pivetta is the one that gets a little bit tougher. We know the White Sox definitely have a lot of pop in their lineup, but the thing is, Pivetta, he's one of those pitchers that can be pretty up or down. You got to really hope you get him on his up day, but he does have some strikeout upside. Pulling up his numbers since last season, a 26% K rate, which is great. 4.3 xFIP though, close to a 10.5% walk rate, ISO close to 200, does give up some hard contact. So he's like the ultimate GPP pitcher most slates. And with this being such a small slate, 3 games right now, probably going to end up being 2. I think you have to at least get to some Pivetta. Obviously, Dylan Cease is going to be the top option here. 32% K rate since last season, does give much power. Can walk some guys as well, but the pitching options do look solid here. But at the same time, both offenses do have plenty of power bats that could give these guys some trouble, but I would side with the Dylan Cease side for sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about prize picks here, and you can warm up. We're going to make a call to the bullpen. That is the name that's the working title of your projection, your personal projections here. We're going to look at some strikeout props, but over here on prize picks, if you use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up with your first deposit, they will match you up to $100. You put in 50, they'll give you 50. You put in 100, they're going to give you 100. You put in 200, they're still going to give you 100 because it matches up to $100. But those funds come out of your account first when you enter into any of their contests. What is their format? It's player props, and it's a lot of fun. You can build out your player prop cards. You can use 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions. They have different payout structures. You can go sort of with the all in, get them all right, and you get a higher payout, or you can do the flex play. If you pick a 5-question card, which is their maximum, and get all 5 right, you will get 10 extra money. If you do a 4-question card and get them all right, you will also get 10 extra money. Wait, what's the difference for that? Well, on the 5 question card, if you get 4 right, you still double your money. You get 3 right, you get 40% back. So unlike other player prop parlays, when you put them together, if you lose one leg, you lose everything. This gives you a couple different options to choose from. Only rules you have to pick at least 2 questions for each card, and it has to be from 2 different teams. Just teams, can be from any different sport. Right now they have over a dozen sports available to us, multiple video game sports, as I like to call them. They've got CSGO, they've got Call of Duty, they've got Rocket League, you've got PGA, soccer, MMA, WNBA, NBA first half, NBA first quarter will be posted soon enough. And of course you get NBA full game, you've got NHL, USFL, tennis, NASCAR, they got everything here. Oh, and baseball. So let's look at some of the baseball strikeout props. Question 1, Clayton Kershaw. They have him for 7. Do you like over or under?
I'm slightly over there. I know Vegas has him at like minus 135 for over 6.5. I'm currently sitting like 7.2. So it's a slight over, but it's a little tough there, but it's a slight edge.
I would agree. And the one thing you're like, a 7, what happens if he gets 7? It just comes out of your card. If it's a tie, your whole card isn't invalidated. That one just comes out and it lowers you to whatever the next card scoring format is. So they want you to have a good user experience. They know if they put it up to 7.5, that's not a good one. They're going to keep it at 7. But hey, it's a nice you get a nice little tie there if things go that way. How about Shane Bieber there? 6.5, or pardon me, 6 strikeouts.
As much as I love Shane Bieber, I do have him just under 6, like in the 5.5 to 6 range. It's just the Blue Jays are so good. I mean, I could see it going either way. I mean, we know Shane Bieber's got tons of strikeout potential, but I am just about even there.
That's fair, because we don't always have to take the overs, right? We can take the unders as well. Awesemo recommends on our MLB player prop page that 6.5 is the line on the books that we're recommending the under on 6.5. So you kind of get a tiebreaker there. So you would probably want to take the under as well. And then our final one here on the afternoon one for the afternoon slate, Dylan Cease, 6.5, tough matchup against the Red Sox. But he is a pretty damn good pitcher.
That he is. And I do like these slight over. We're sitting at 6.5 to 7 range, kind of on the north side of that. So I wouldn't mind taking the over, but man, the matchup is not that great. But like you said, amazing pitcher, and I'm willing to roll the dice on that.
All right. And then that's just one of the categories we have. We also have runs allowed in the first inning. Yes, there's going to be a run. No, there's not. That's a new feature they've added. They've also done goals for NHL in the first period. That's if you want to get your quick sweat in. I think the goals one is first 8 minutes of the game. For that, you have pitching outs, which is always interesting. Perhaps you're not, we're feeling a little close here on the strikeouts, but maybe we think Kershaw is going to go more than 6 innings. Well, he's at 18.5 outs, so 3 outs per inning. That's 6. We need him to get 6 and outs, 6 innings and 1 extra out, and we're going to get there. So that one's definitely something to look at. You get pitcher scoring. The pitcher scoring, you can click on let me go to the scoring chart here. They break down all of the different scoring. Their pitcher scoring, it's different than slightly different than most of the sites. It's most closely related to FanDuel, so you can check that, but you always want to make sure, because Price Picks doesn't always use a DraftKings scoring or a FanDuel scoring, and sometimes it doesn't match either one. Basketball, they use FanDuel. Football, they are full PPR, but they don't use yardage bonuses. Hockey, they have their own scoring system compared to all of the other sites. And then for their hitters, it closely resembles FanDuel, but not quite. The interesting thing about a lot of their hitters, if you can find somebody that's at 4.5 fantasy points, all you need them to do is put the ball in play and get on base. And they'll probably get over that, because you get 3 for a single, you get 2 for a walk, 2 for a hit by pitch. So when you start to look at some of these players here and you're like, wow, are they going to get on base? If they're an all or nothing player, you probably don't want to look at them, but you get somebody like a Joey Votto, who's at, get him around 6.5, or someone that has a decent walk rate. All of a sudden you're like, hey, get him a walk, get him a hit, I'm in business now. So that's one thing you want to think about. And then you can also look at these for home runs. So we have our home run model available on Awesemo, the player props as well. But here, 10 points for a home run. Then you get 2 more for a run, you scoring the run. And if anybody's on base, you get 2 more for anybody's RBI. Most of the hitters never really get above 7.5 or 8 even if they're in Coors Field. So you want to start looking at that. It's a lot of fun there. So you can kind of stack your team. You think there's a poor pitcher on the mound, you can kind of build in a little synergy into your player card. So there's a lot of strategy within this. It's a lot of fun. They have a great interface, and they also have an app available in Google Play or the Apple Store. All right, the main slate. Here we go. Do we have any weather risks on this one? Yes, Baltimore. So otherwise, we should be good to go. We will have a lot of options tonight because there are 8 games. Even if we lose Baltimore, there's going to be 7. Last night, things were a little imbalanced last night with all of the West Coast games, because there was 5 games starting late, and it looked like, oh my God, I'm doing so great. And you're like, oh, half the slate hasn't even started yet. So I had a lot of currently winnings, and then I didn't have as much currently winnings by the time I finally went to bed before midnight because I'm old. But turning this one over to you, assuming the game plays, Carlos Hernandez, Jordan Lyles, who you got?
So these are two offenses I usually pick on with my pitchers. The problem is both these pitchers in this game don't look very good. We have Carlos Hernandez for the Royals, Jordan Lyles for the Orioles. I think you could make a case for both as cheap options, but I just think they lack real upside. I mean, if you're looking at their numbers, Carlos Hernandez, 103 inning sample size, 5.1 xFIP. Jordan Lyles at 4.68 xFIP. Both are sitting around an 18.5% K rate. Both have high walk rates. Hernandez gives up less powers than Jordan Lyles, but man, it's kind of gross on both sides. I realize the matchups are fine for both, but I'm just hoping this gets rained out so I don't have to worry about it, which I'm probably not going to roster either pitcher anyway.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And there's rain all day. There's not through the night. There's not even windows where they can play this. So it's kind of, even if you go with the hitters, it's cold, it's wet, it's miserable. Not particularly exciting on this one. Now we've got some intrigue here in our next game. Moving to San Francisco, it'll be a 4:15 local start. So that means an afternoon game out there in San Francisco. You've got the Cardinals with Steven Matz on the mound going against Logan Webb. I believe Webb was scratched from his last start, or he had it pushed back. I don't think it was anything major, just he didn't feel right or whatever. And sometimes pitchers, just when they warm up or they go through their regular routine, they're just like, my stomach's bothering me, my back feels a little tweaked or whatever. And we're like, yeah, we'll just push your start. No big deal. We've got a long season ahead of us. No reason to get hurt early. So I think he's an interesting option going against the Redbirds, who are likely to only have two players that are batting from the left side of the plate. One of them will be Corey Dickerson. The other one will be Tommy Edman, their switch hitter, who started the season out batting 8th or 9th. He has been now promoted up to the top of the order because Dylan Carlson, I think he's just in a bit of a slump. I don't even think he's hurt. He's just been lost at the plate. So the Redbirds look like a team to target against. Steven Matz, on the other hand, bit of interest here. The best Giants hitters all hit from the left side of the plate. That would be Jock Peterson. I doubt he'll start today. You've got Mike Yastrzemski. He'll be down in the order. He was batting second. Those guys went 1-2 last night. Brandon Crawford, he'll be in the lineup no matter what. He's okay in lefty-lefty matchups, but we'll probably see the Giants roll out a bunch of righties tonight. I don't know if that's good or bad because, no Brandon Belt, no Jock Peterson. They're losing some of their power here. Does that entice you at all into looking at Steven Matz?
I've never been someone to roster Steven Matz too often. Like, he's a solid pitcher, 3.76 xFIP, 22.8% K rate, doesn't allow too much power, but for whatever reason, I just haven't had the best of luck rostering Matz. But with the lineup not looking as solid as usual for the Giants, I mean, you have Austin Slater, Dubon, Darren Roof, Wilmer Flores. Like, they have some guys they roll out for platoon splits, which a few of these guys do hit left-handed pitching pretty well, but it's still a pretty low implied run total for the Giants, sitting below 4. I think at $8,300 I could get to some Steven Matz, although I'm not really expecting a whole lot. Logan Webb, on the other hand, at $9,600 is someone I definitely have some interest in. Now, he hasn't been as sharp as he was last year. I believe he gave 11 hits in his last start. I still think the talent's there, obviously. 2.87 xFIP, 25% K rate, big lean to the ground balls, and barely gives up any power whatsoever. And if you're looking at the Cardinals splits when it comes to lefties and righties, it's kind of similar to what we saw last season, where the Cardinals were killing left-handed pitching. They're still good versus righties, but in a smaller sample size this year versus lefties, a 229 ISO and a 137 WRC plus, compared to righties with a 0.088 ISO and 91 WRC plus. So as far as a handedness matchup, Logan Webb's definitely in a pretty solid spot here. I'm a little concerned with how he's pitched so far this year, his price point being close to $10,000, but I still think he's someone I'm going to get to for sure.
All right. Looping back to the first slate, we do have a super chat here from Mark Langford asking for the top 2 must plays and top 2 value plays on the early slate. I believe we'll both say that Clayton Kershaw is probably the pitcher you want to lock in. From there, our short list would be Kevin Gausman, Shane Bieber, and probably Sonny Gray. If you're feeling a little frisky, you can go down, not even going down. You can get contrarian with Tyler Anderson. Who was the pitching that first game?
Drew Smiley.
Sorry, I had it. Again, the double headers just screw up they screw up my filters too. So if you want to get a little crazy there, you can go with Drew Smiley. On the hitting side, I would say Buxton is probably the number one play on the slate. I'm going to go with Max Kepler as an intriguing option. 3,500. He's batting second. It looks like he's going to come in on about a quarter of all lineups, but I like those guys for the 1-2 synergy. And then if I was looking at anybody else, assuming Trey Turner is in the lineup, you do, he's a very complete hitter. You get the opportunity that he may steal, maybe not in the cooler weather here. He just has 1 steal in his last 5 games. So, he's more valuable in the field and in the batter's box. So they don't want to risk him as much because when he was with the Nationals, he hurt himself a couple times stealing bases. I believe one was a hamstring and then another one he fractured or jammed a finger, which was not exactly fun. But those would be my guys. Any other hitters standing out to you there that you want to call out there for Mark?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of stealing with Trey Turner, you kind of stole the guys I wanted to talk about there. But
why do you think I went first? I'm not new to this, my friend. I'm not new to this.
I will throw out some other bats I do like, though. I love Brian Reynolds on Pittsburgh. I like Brian Hayes a lot. I kind of like all of Pittsburgh. I know it's not the sexiest offense out there, but at their price points, playing in Cincinnati, they do look pretty good to me.
All righty, let's get back to the main slate here. Some nice pitching options here. Corbin Burnes, tough matchup going against the Bravos. You've got Burnes coming in at 10,300 on DK. Of course, he is the reigning Cy Young Award winner. On the other side, you have Max Fried, 8,900. We could actually pair those guys together, attempt to box the win on DK. We're more concerned about strikeouts with the scoring on DK. Wins, even if we play both of these starters, we've got about a 35% chance of still getting the win because so often games end up getting tied or it ends, and then the bullpen gets it, etc. So even when you're taking both starters in the same game, no guarantee that you're going to get it. Low implied run total on both sides. It looks like a pick 'em here with just 7 runs for the over under. How are you feeling about the pitching here? Do you want to earmark a whole chunk of our salary cap for Burnes?
Yeah, every time Corbin Burnes pitches, I pretty much just play him. The guy has just been amazing since last season. A 2.3 xFIP, 35.5% K rate, allows virtually 0 power, 0 hard contact. Is the matchup tough versus Atlanta, especially with Ronald Acuna back? Yes, but at the same time, it's a very tough matchup for the Braves offense going up against Corbin Burnes, who pretty much nobody can hit, and I'm thinking that's going to continue here. Don't really care about the matchup. They still strike out a little bit versus right-handed pitching anyway. So no matter the price point for Burnes, I typically always play him in a 10-3. I really don't think it's that steep of a price point.
Yeah, and in as far as we can play batters against our pitchers. This is one, there's about 5 or 10 pitchers I don't really feel that way about it. Corbin Burnes is one of them. Sometimes on a small slate, you can make the argument that you're willing to go against Max Scherzer because if he gives up 3 runs, there's a chance it was 3 solo shots and he still has 11 strikeouts, right? You're like, oh, he went 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, gave up 3 runs. Cool. Oh, I got one of the home runs, even better. But this one, don't feel that way about it with Burnes. While I won't completely rule it out, I don't think I'll actively get players against him just because I don't think I'm going to get a lot of the Braves. Whereas last night, some of the Braves did project well because they were, righties going against lefties, and it was a decent hitting environment. So no surprise that I had a few matchup there when I had Lauer on 35% of my lineups. A few of them ended up against the Braves. I don't think we'll see that here. But for Max Fried, aside from maybe Hunter Renfroe, and I say maybe, potentially Willy Adames, is there anybody that scares you going against Fried?
No, I mean, you have Andrew McCutchen, which, back in the day, obviously an elite player now. So it's just more of a guy that I play versus lefties here and there. Willy Adames, Hunter Renfroe. But outside of that, I think Max Fried's in a pretty good spot. Is he a little expensive? Sure. But it looks like from this game, these are going to be the 2 most popular pitchers as of right now. Obviously, there's a lot of time where this could update, but it's hard not to like either. If you're looking at the top pitchers tool, we have Fried coming in at 4th, which does show some negative leverage. Burnes at the very top, but I still think Fried's worthwhile to play below 9K with his upside and the guy that doesn't allow much power at all either.
All right. Now we will, the other show went a little long, and of course we've got a bunch of games here still to go. So we're not going to dive too much into the hitting on this one, because again, these are pretty good pitchers here. We have plenty of offense coming up in our other games, starting with our next one here. Now you've got the Dodgers in game 2 going against the Cubs. Once again, lather, rinse, repeat, couple of southpaws on the mound. This time it's Tyler Anderson and Daniel Norris, the understudies of Kershaw and Smiley. But Anderson, somewhat intriguing here at 7,800 on DraftKings, where we do have to roster 2 pitchers. Daniel Norris, $4,000 flat. Do we have a pitch count information on him? I did not look that up. Let me look that up real quick. You talk to us about Tyler Anderson.
Well, just to bring up Norris really quick.
Okay.
So his pitch counts the last few starts 16, 16, 20.
Okay, so he's definitely an opener. And wow, the interesting thing is he's pitching almost on a starter schedule.
Yeah, the usage is a little odd. It's just, for me personally, I'm not going to consider using Norris. I mean,
no, there's no reason to. Anytime you see $4,000, you got to look at it. But he's pitched on the April 7th, 10th, 15th, 20th, 29th. That's 5 outings for a guy who doesn't crack 20 pitches each time. Woo! Nice to be him and have that job. So no right. Norris for us. But how about Tyler Anderson?
Tyler Anderson, I could get to more so just because he's pitching for the Dodgers. You're always going to have good win equity. The thing is, he hasn't surpassed 4 strikeouts in the start this year. And if you're looking at his numbers since last year, close to 200 inning sample size, a 4.5 xFIP, sub 20% K rate. The one thing I will say is he doesn't allow much hard contact and doesn't really walk anybody. And we do have a slight breeze blowing in. Doesn't look like it's going to be as bad as the first game. Looks like below 10 miles per hour, but just still a bump to the pitching. I don't mind Anderson. I think he's okay. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but I mean, he's not going to stand out too much for me. We do have better pitching options on the slate, but if you're looking for a cheap one, if you can go 5 innings, I don't mind it.
All right. If you were going, and this is be game 2, but we should see most of the regulars there. How do you feel about some of the guys going against Anderson here? Patrick Wisdom, Frank Schwindel has some surprising trailing 365 success, considering he's Frank Schwindel. If you just saw the raw numbers, you'd be like, oh, I better be rostering this guy. But when you try to click on Frank Schwindel's name, it's like you can't click on it. There's like a glitch in the matrix. Are you interested in them? When we may see a little Yan Gomes. Well, I didn't see if Gomes is in the first one, but Gomes is pretty good against lefties. Ian Happ, solid switch hitter. Anybody standing out? These would probably be one-offs or maybe duos.
Yeah, I mean, some of these righties with power versus lefties, which, I mean, we got pretty much a full-on projected righty lineup here. Wilson Contreras, Seiya Suzuki. His price did come down quite a bit. He's only $4,400. I remember he was close to $6K not too long ago. We know he's got plenty of pop versus lefties. Yan Gomes is cheap if he happens to start the second game. Wisdom, Schwindel, like you said. Is it pretty? No. Do these guys strike out quite a bit? Yes. But Tyler's not a guy that's going to miss too many bats. So I wouldn't hate a contrarian stack for the Cubs, but at the same time, we're talking about a 3.3 implied run total, which it's not going to look too great.
Yep. And I do see Yan Gomes batting third in that first game. Because there's the DH, it wouldn't shock me. He's a good enough hitter against lefties. It wouldn't shock me if, he and Wilson Contreras play both ends of this one with taking turns behind the plate. Okay, on to our next game here. Here's another one where there's some interesting offense. Our offensive potential here, and I don't know how to attack this game. So Arizona is a team I've been wanting to pick on because they don't have a deep lineup. They don't have any particular hitter who's overly scary. They do set up reasonably at the top, or they'll flip the top half of their lineup depending on whether they're facing a righty or a lefty, but I don't know what to do with them. Now, the roof is slated to be closed tonight. I'm going to drop this link into chat here. This is one of the best resources that's out there for the Arizona Cardinals, the Arizona Diamondbacks roof. So the rules at Arizona is not the rules. The trend is in the summer, they're going to close the roof most of the time. Nights like tonight, there's a good chance they will start it closed and they will open it in the 5th or 6th inning as the sun kind of goes down and the temperatures start to go down. They like to have the roof open as much as possible because about the time we get into mid-June, it doesn't get open for very often until they get out to September again. So that's sort of their rules in the spring. Now they do a pretty good job of saying what they are going to do with their roof. A lot of the other major leagues that you can never really find good information. It's Texas, their vice president of marketing will tweet out before the game if the roof is going to be open or not. There's a nice blog out there that usually gets the Houston roof status right, and then that's it. Want to know if the Marlins roof is open? You better call the ballpark, because even their official sources never get updated and are sometimes months, if not years, out of date. Very odd how people handle this differently. But if you guys ever know any good sources for these, and I look for them relatively regularly to try to keep these updated, ever since the site, I think it was called Is the Roof Open or something like that, where someone used to collect all this information, and they haven't updated that one in a couple of years either. So if there's any good site, this is the one I've got. I'll look for my Houston link and drop that in there as well. But tonight, roofs should be closed, at least for the front part of the game here. Couple of dodgy offenses, couple of dodgy pitchers here.
Yeah.
I think I'm leaning towards the offenses. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards the offenses. The funny thing is, though, a lot of times I'll roster pitchers against both these offenses, but at the same time, we have Kyle Freeland on the mound, although even I believe the Rockies gave him like $70 million for some reason. Not really sure why. Then you have Zach Davies on the mound, a guy I always pick against. I think while both offenses don't look amazing on paper, I think they're offenses I'm going to get to here. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to have a slight lean to, because some of these guys do have some okay splits versus left-handed pitching, like Cooper Hummel. Jordan Luplow a few years ago had like Nelson Cruz-like numbers versus left-handed pitching. For some reason, I don't know why. That's definitely trailed off a little bit, but he still has decent splits versus lefties. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, Carson Kelly. Then after that, we started to get into a couple of the lefties and Bolton Varsho and Josh Rojas. But I think the Diamondbacks are a decent spot here. 4.5 implied run total. The Rockies, while I like to pick on Zach Davies with his poor numbers, talking about a 5x FIP since last season, only a 17% K rate and 11% walk rate. But man, I just hate playing the Rockies on the road.
And I go back and forth on that. They started the season off on a bit of a lucky streak here, but they've turned over so much of their lineup. I mean, Randall Grichuk is now playing a prominent role. Connor Joe he's apparently the second coming. He's a young Roy Hobbs. You've got CJ Cron, who is hitting so much better this year than he did last year. They're good. They're good individual hitters. Where are they collectively? In the back half of their lineup falls off. Yeah, Chuck Nasty, can he still get it done? No, not really. It gets to be a little tricky. So you can do some home run hunting, I think, just with the raw power from Cron and Grichuk, who are both absolutely fine in righty-righty matchups, but you're paying a pretty hefty premium here on DraftKings. They are 5,500 and 5,100 respectively. It's like they priced them for Coors Field.
Right.
Isn't that funny how sometimes the Rockies, when they leave Coors Field, their prices are still jacked up, but the hitters coming in for the first game, like, oh, it caught everybody off guard. I didn't know this team was going to be in Coors Field today. How could we possibly know who's going to be playing in Coors Field in advance, right? DraftKings. Darn you. A couple of good pitchers in our next one here. And that's sort of been a refrain, and we're going to say that a couple more times. But we have Pablo Lopez going against San Diego. Of course, San Diego without Fernando Tatis, not as daunting a lineup as they were last year. Solid, just not terrifying. Just a 3.4 implied run total here. That both lets us know that, wow, we're in the dead ball era again. We have a pretty good pitcher on the mound, and the pod squad, not exactly a robust offense. On the other side, Miami, 3.2 implied run total. They're going against Sean Manaea here. You can take a few of the Miami Marlins to do a little home run hunting. Manaea is a pitcher that generally does not get destroyed, but he does allow a little one-off power here and there. I think I'm going to lean towards the pitchers in this one, which has me going back to the game we just talked about for more of the offensive players. So I haven't figured out who it's going to be just yet. How do you feel about the pitchers, and is there any one-off homers you take, home run hunting options on either side?
Yeah, I love both pitchers on this site. If you're looking at the top pitchers tool that we have over on the website, Pablo Lopez is currently coming in with the best leverage score on the entire slate. And that's mainly just because of the massive price point, $10,000. Everyone's going to play Corbin Burns up top, and they're probably going to try to grab like a Sean Manaea or Steven Matz or Max Fried at a cheaper price point. So a lot of people aren't going to get to that Pablo Lopez, Corbin Burns combination. And while Corbin Burns is still our top pitcher, you can get some real nice leverage on Pablo Lopez at some pretty low ownership. And he's got a decent matchup versus the Padres. We know they got a decent lineup, but without the Tatis, it's definitely watered down quite a bit. And Pablo Lopez in his own right, very good pitcher, 28% K rate, doesn't have a lot of power, lean to the ground balls, 3.18 xFIP. I do like him quite a bit. As for Sean Manaea, I like the matchup versus Miami. So far, their splits versus left-handed pitching this season at a 30.3% K rate, only a 105 team ISO, 85 WRC plus. So they're in a pretty good spot. So Sean Manaea is in a pretty good spot. And obviously, Manaea is a very solid pitcher with his 25.5% K rate. It looks like he's got the second best odds to be a top pitcher over on DraftKings right now, currently on the site. So I do like that price point, $9,300. As far as one-off power goes from Miami, I think we could maybe look at Jorge Soler, Jesus Aguilar would probably be the two options I'd get to.
All right. I was just pulling up the trailing since the beginning of last season numbers for Miami against lefties. There are some strikeouts in this lineup. Aguilar 23%, Soler 25%, Cooper 30%. Garcia 22, and those are all guys with the platoon advantage. Heck, even John Birdie has a 24% strikeout rate. So that's food for thought there. That collectively, on average, they strike out 30% of the time against lefties. The projected lineup tonight, dating back to the beginning of last season. So interesting stuff there. Two more games to go here. We've got the Washington Nationals on their West Coast swing. They're out in Anaheim taking on the Angels. You've got Josiah Gray going against Michael Lorenzen. Lorenzen's somewhat intriguing at 7,200. Heck, Josiah Gray is as well. Both those guys tend to struggle against lefties. They have reasonable strikeout potential, not the easiest of matchups if you're ever going against the Angels, but on the off chance Trout or Ohtani is out tonight, that dramatically weakens their lineup. We'll have to keep an eye on that if they're getting a day of rest or what have you. How do you feel about the pitching in this one? Do either of these guys merit SP2 status, or would this be kind of late slate only and we're just running out of options?
I'd say we're more so running out of options here. I'm not a big fan of either, especially Josiah Gray versus the Angels. I definitely like the Angels offense, and he has an absurd price over on FanDuel. I'm hoping it's not an error on my part, but I believe he's $9,300 over there, which is just way too high. In my opinion, he's only 200 below Sean Manaea. I just can't really justify that versus the Angels. I will say he's got a decent 26% K rate since last season. Problem is he walks a lot of guys, has a ton of power, doesn't get much ground balls, and that's going to be a problem versus this Angels lineup that boasts Taylor Ward, who's been on fire, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Rendon, Walsh, Marsh, Stassi, Wade, and it gets a little bit ugly at the very bottom too. But man, I just don't like either pitcher. Michael Lorenzen, the same thing, where it's a smaller sample size to look at, but a 16% K rate, 10% walk rate, close to 5x FIP. I just can't really justify using either pitcher. If I had to lean towards one, I'd say Lorenzen, just because he might be able to get you a cheap win versus the Nationals, but I'm not in love with either.
So is it shocking or unfathomable that Taylor Ward is $100 more than Shohei Ohtani?
Is he? Let me check. Yeah, wow. That's insane. He's been playing so good this year. I guess the DK pricing algorithm, I get it, but man, it's crazy how good he's been so far this year.
Yeah, he has tailed off a little bit. He's come back to earth in his last few games, but he had let's see, 9 games ago he had two solo shots. 7 games ago he had a home run and 4 RBI. 5 games ago he had a solo shot. That's a lot of he's got hits in all but one of his last 10 games. He's on fire, but should he be 100 more than Ohtani? No. Probably not, but here we are. And he's 200 less than Trout. So this will be a tougher lineup to get to, especially if you're working with Corbin Burns and some of the other top end pitching, which makes things intriguing. So it's kind of fun when the pricing gets out of control for a lineup that's in a reasonable spot. We could see their popularity somewhat in check tonight, which is not something you usually see with the Angels lineup when they're at full strength, because we didn't even really mention Anthony Rendon going against his former team as well. And then you've got Walsh, who Walsh was like when everybody got hurt last year, he was kind of their main best guy, along with the half injured Ohtani, and now he's well down the lineup. So this is a tough lineup to deal or to target against with pitching. Last game of the night here, we got about 25 minutes before the early lock on DraftKings 12:35. You'll get almost an hour until FanDuel locks their games. This game is in Seattle. It is going to be cold. It is going to be miserable, but let's not forget they do have the retractable roof, but it is kind of a carport roof. There are no walls around their stadium, so it is still going to be cold and damp. Game time temperatures in the mid 40s. That does not sound very fun. You've got Drew Rasmussen, who's an intriguing pitching option, even though the Tampa Bay sort of has the team philosophy of not letting their pitchers go through the lineup a third time. I'm perfectly fine with that. You've got a Seattle lineup that's sort of been getting it done with smoke and mirrors. They've been without Mitch Haniger the majority of the season. I can't remember if Jesse Winker finally got his first home run, but otherwise heading into the beginning of this week, he hadn't had a home run yet. You've got Eugenio Suarez, who when he connects the ball, it goes really, really far, but he's not great against righties, and he's a strikeout machine these days. You've got youngsters Julio Rodriguez and Jared Kelenic down there at the bottom of the lineup. Those guys have some holes in their swing, a little bit of speed there for Rodriguez. Abraham Toro, who came over as part of a trade with Houston when they moved a reliever at the end of the season for him. This is not a very tough Mariners lineup. If you look at it, and then JP Crawford, who all of a sudden decided he was going to hit literally everything. And what was he, like a 250 hitter coming into this season? And now he's at one point he was flirting with the league lead in batting average. What do you want to do here? Rasmussen seems to be the way I want to land.
Yeah, and I'm never one to really roster Rasmussen too much. I don't really roster Rays pitching too often because they're kind of weird with it, besides like a McClanahan or Tyler Glass now back when he was still fully healthy. But I think he's interesting. I mean, a couple starts ago, he faced off versus the Seattle team. I want to say it was probably his career best game, 34 fantasy points, 9 strikeouts, only like 2 hits and 84 pitches. Thing is, though, I think it's more of an outlier because Rasmussen's not a guy that really generates too many strikeouts. He's currently sitting at 23.6%, a little bit lower than that. They get bumped up a little bit, but doesn't have a lot of power. I was pitching in Tampa Bay, which is always a bump. Now he's in Seattle this time around. But I still think if you're looking for he's not going to be a chalky SB2 option. So if you're trying to get a little bit different, I think he's fine versus Seattle, like you said. Not a superimposing lamp, and there's a lot of strikeouts there. So I think he's fine, but I wouldn't go anything above that saying he's a great play.
All right. Aaron D says, yes, Winker did get a home run night before last. So yes, Winker now has 1 home run and 9 RBI on the season. He is batting 200. Julio Rodriguez does have 9 stolen bases. He's batting 230. Eugenio Suarez, he has half a dozen home runs, but he's batting 220. Ty France, he's someone that was hitting like 5 times better than what his baseline projection is. He's doing well. And then, as I mentioned, JP Crawford batting 347 because why not? Baseball. Goodness gracious. As a Mariners fan here, I approve, I guess. But will I be able to stay up and watch one of my 2 favorite teams tonight, the Nationals and the Mariners? I will at least see the first half of their games. There's no way I make it till the 9th inning, but hey, we'll give it the old college try nonetheless. Any final thoughts on this? And then we'll look at some of your home run options from the bullpen.
No, it's kind of an ugly game for the last one. Besides Rasmussen, I don't really like either offenses. I mean, I know Marco Gonzalez isn't the best pitcher, but I think he's good enough to where I really don't want to stack the Rays up too much.
All right. Who is your top home runs from the late, sort of the main slate here, I should say?
Yeah. So as far as the main slate goes, it's kind of a broken record here, but it's a lot coming from the Angels. It's Ohtani. It's Mike Trout as the top 2 options. And then I believe, who is it? Jordan Luplow and Tom Marte were getting some love from Arizona too as well.
All right. So here's your prize picks play. I would take a hitter fantasy score. So again, they get a single, it's 3 points, a walk is 2, I'm going from memory of an RBI is 2, a run is 2. So basically you need them to put the ball, I'm going to say basically one more time just because putting that ball in play. So we can go Ohtani, we can go Trout, and let's see if they have Ward, because while maybe we don't want to pay that salary for Ward, We can get runs plus RBIs over a half. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I'll take that one as well. And then let's see who else. Rendon. Let's look to make a stack here. Rendon, 5.5 fantasy points. I like that one. We could get it 1.5 hits plus walks. Not horrible. I'd rather take the chance on fantasy points because if he gets on and scores, you're going to come pretty close to getting that one. So that would be the route I would go. And then we got to pick one person from another team. Oh, who do you like for strikeouts on the main slate? How do you feel about Rasmussen? They have him at 3.5. Tell me if you have more than 4.5, we'll take Rasmussen on our bet here.
I have low 4s. So
okay. How about Manaea? He's at 6.
I have him at close to 6.5 with that high strikeout Miami team versus lefties. So
okay, we'll go with against Miami with my Manaea. We're gonna go the overs on all of those. So that's Ohtani, Trout, Ward, Rendon. We're doing our little stack. We're gonna go with Manaea. Let's put $10 on that to win 100. Lock that bad boy in. There we go. Now, if anyone DNPs in this one, they just come out of your card. This happens occasionally. The other day I built some early cards with Aaron Judge in them, and then he ended up not playing or not starting that game. But if they do come in and pinch hit, that counts as playing. So sometimes you want to be careful. I figure most of those guys are going to start tonight, but hey, it's only money otherwise. But if one of them doesn't play, it won't invalidate your card. Now my card becomes a four pick card. Now I have to get all 4 right for it to win, but my card doesn't become invalidated. So I'm okay with that. Final thoughts before we get on out of here, Chris?
No, we talked about a lot of games. It should be 2 fun slates. We got the one coming up in about 20 minutes. So make sure you get your lineups in if you're over on DK. But other than that, it should be a fun day and looking forward to it.
All right, coming up after us here, we've got several more shows. Let's go to we've got NASCAR Live Before Lock, I believe that's tomorrow. That would be way after us. Let me get to today's run sheet here because it's more fun if I'm going to be accurate. Let's see, because I know there's 3 shows. There we go. NBA Live Before Lock is with Greg and Matt Lamarca. It's an afternoon start today, 3:30 tip-off. Don't get caught watching the paint dry on that one. You've got the MMA Live Before Lock at 4:30 with Jason Floyd and Pete Heat Rogers. And then at 6 o'clock, you're going to get the MLB Live Before Lock with Terry and Gundacker. We have 7 videos on demand. You're going to want to check that out. With that, gamers, good luck.